The evening had started like every other quiet evening in the small village. The sun had dropped behind the hills, leaving the sky painted in a soft mix of orange and purple. An elderly grandma sat outside her small home, enjoying the cool breeze after a long, warm day. Her 8-year-old grandchild played nearby, drawing shapes in the dirt with a small stick and humming softly. Life in the village moved slowly, and the two of them liked it that way. There was no noise, no rush, and no disturbance. People here lived close to nature, and nights were always peaceful. But that night, something unusual appeared in the sky. It was small at first, like a star that glowed brighter than the others. Grandma noticed it when she lifted her cup of tea. She squinted a little, thinking her old eyes were playing tricks on her. But the light didn't go away. In fact, it grew brighter, almost as if it were moving. She leaned forward, watching carefully. Her grandchild noticed her staring upward and followed her gaze. "Is that a shooting star?" the child asked. Grandma didn't answer right away. Shooting stars moved fast, streaking across the sky and disappearing. But this light wasn't disappearing. It was slowing down. It looked as if it was dropping toward the hills behind the village. The child stood up and wiped dusty hands on their clothes. "It's coming closer." People in nearby homes began stepping outside too, pointing at the sky and talking in confused, excited voices. In a village where nothing surprising ever happened, even a strange light was enough to gather everyone's attention. The glowing object kept descending until it disappeared behind the hill. A soft humming noise rolled across the fields, almost like a distant engine. Some villagers gasped. Others whispered prayers under their breath. A few laughed nervously, pretending it was nothing serious. But everyone felt the same thing deep inside. Something extraordinary had just happened. Grandma's grandchild tugged on her sleeve. "Can we go see?" She shook her head at first. She was old, her knees didn't support her well, and walking far in the dark wasn't safe. But the curiosity inside her wouldn't rest. She had lived 80 years, seen storms, droughts, celebrations, and tragedy. But she had never seen anything fall from the sky like that. The child kept insisting softly, not out of mischief, but genuine wonder. And Grandma knew that sometimes for a child, moments like these shaped memories that lasted a lifetime. After thinking for a while, she stood up slowly. "We won't go too close," she said. "We will just look from the field." The child nodded eagerly and stayed close to her side. They walked past the village well, crossed the narrow dirt path, and stepped into the open field. The night air was cooler now, brushing against their faces as they walked. Crickets sang all around them, but one thing felt strange. There was a faint glow coming from behind the hill. Not bright, not harsh, but definitely there. It pulsed softly, like the slow heartbeat of something alive. A few villagers followed behind them, though they kept more distance. People were curious, but not everyone was brave enough to walk toward an unknown light in the dark. Grandma took careful steps. The ground was uneven, and she didn't want to stumble. The child offered to hold her hand, and she smiled at the gesture. As they moved closer to the hill, the humming noise returned. It wasn't loud or threatening. It was more like a gentle vibration in the air, something that made the hairs on their arms rise. "What do you think it is?" The child whispered. "I don't know," she answered honestly. But whatever it is, it came from very far away. When they reached the slope of the hill, the glow grew stronger. It painted the rocks and grass in a pale silver light. Grandma's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from a strange mix of excitement and disbelief. She had told many stories to her grandchild, stories about stars, planets, and the mysteries of the universe. She never imagined she would witness something that made her own stories feel small dot at the top of the hill. They paused. The glow washed their faces softly. Below them, On the other side sat something none of the villagers had ever seen. It wasn't a rock or a fire. It wasn't any machine they knew. It was round, smooth, and gently pulsing with light, like it was breathing. No flames, no smoke, no signs of danger, just a quiet, otherworldly glow. The child grabbed Grandma's arm, whispering, "It looks like a big silver egg." Grandma couldn't deny it. The shape was like a perfect oval, resting in the grass, shining quietly. And the humming came from it. More villagers peeked over the hilltop behind them, whispering among themselves. Some were scared, others excited, and a few were simply confused. No one knew what to do. Should they go closer? Should they run? Should they wait? Grandma felt a strange sense of calm instead of fear. She stepped down the slope slowly, holding the child's hand. The closer they got, the clearer the details became. The surface of the object wasn't metal. It was something smoother, almost like glass, but glowing from inside. The air around it was warm, but not uncomfortably so. As they stood only a few steps away, the object emitted a soft sound, like a sigh. Then a thin line appeared on its surface, forming a shape like a door. The villagers on the hill gasped. Some turned to run back, while others crouched behind bushes. Afraid of what might happen next. Grandma held her grandchild close. "Stay behind me," she whispered, though her own voice trembled slightly. The line on the object widened, opening slowly with a gentle glow spilling out from the inside. There was no smoke, no explosion, no threat. Just calm, quiet light. Then something moved inside the object, something tall. A figure stepped forward, its shape silhouetted against the glow. It wasn't human, but it wasn't frightening either. It moved gracefully, almost floating as it stepped onto the grass. The child pressed against Grandma, but didn't scream. The figure's smooth and reflective skin shone like polished stone. It turned its head as if examining the surroundings with curiosity. Then another figure stepped out, and then another. They stood together, looking at the elderly woman and the child with expressions no human could read. Their movements were silent, their eyes glowing softly. Grandma felt her heartbeat slow down. She didn't know why, but she sensed they didn't mean harm. They seemed more surprised to see humans standing bravely so close. One of the figures tilted its head and let out a sound, not a growl, not a threat, but something that almost sounded like laughter, light and echoing. The other figures reacted with similar sounds, as if amused by something. The child whispered nervously, "Are they laughing?" Grandma didn't know how to answer. She only knew one thing. Whatever these beings were, they had come a long way, and they were looking directly at her and the child now. They seemed curious, maybe even pleased to see them. But she had no idea what they wanted. The figures stepped closer, surrounding the two humans. Not touching, not reaching out, just observing. Grandma kept her hand on the child's shoulder. Her posture steady, despite the fear bubbling inside her. Then, with a soft hum, the figures gestured toward the open object, inviting them inside. Grandma swallowed hard. Her life had been quiet and simple. She had never expected anything extraordinary. But now, standing under the night sky with strange beings inviting her into their glowing craft, she realized she was about to step into a story no one from her village had ever imagined. She took a deep breath, held the child's hand, and walked forward as the villagers watched in stunned silence. Behind her. Everything was about to change. When Grandma stepped toward the glowing doorway, she felt as if the ground under her feet had softened. The light that spilled out from the inside wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm, like morning sunlight passing through thin curtains. Her grandchild held her hand tightly, not crying, not pulling away, just staying close. Something about the moment felt unreal, like walking into a dream they couldn't wake up from. The villagers on the hillside didn't dare come closer. Some whispered to each other, some prayed quietly, and others simply froze, unable to process what they were seeing. But they all watched as the elderly woman and the child approached the mysterious craft. The tall figures stood around the door, waiting. They didn't push or pull. They simply stood, silent and curious. When Grandma reached the entrance, she paused. She looked back at her village, the familiar houses, the quiet night, the people she had known all her life. And then she turned again toward the strange doorway that hummed softly. With a steady breath, she stepped inside. The child followed instantly, trusting her completely. The moment they entered, the doorway closed behind them. The outside world disappeared like someone had blown out a candle. Grandma felt a gentle shift beneath her feet, almost like the floor had come alive. She looked around slowly, trying to understand where she was. The inside of the craft didn't look like any room she had ever been in. There were no walls in the way she understood walls, no corners, no sharp edges. Everything flowed smoothly, curving gently like the inside of a shell polished by the ocean. The light seemed to come from everywhere at once. No bulbs, no lamps, just soft, glowing surfaces. The child reached out and touched one of the walls. "It feels warm," the child whispered. Grandma touched it too. It wasn't metal. It wasn't plastic. It felt almost like soft stone, smooth and soothing. The tall figures followed them inside. Their movements were silent, and their steps made no sound. They walked with a slow grace, almost floating. They didn't speak in any language the humans knew. Instead, soft tones echoed through the space, gentle and distant, almost like musical notes humming in the air. Grandma stood protectively in front of the child. Even though the beings didn't seem harmful, she couldn't stop herself. She was old, but her heart was steady. She had cared for her family all her life, and she wasn't about to stop now. One of the figures stepped closer. It looked directly at her, its large eyes reflecting the glowing room. Then it lifted one long arm and made a gentle gesture, like inviting them to follow. Grandma hesitated. The child looked up at her with wide eyes. "What do we do?" She answered softly, "We walk." "They haven't hurt us. They just want to show us something." They followed the figure deeper into the craft. As they walked, the walls shifted slightly, forming new pathways. It was as if the ship itself responded to their steps. The air inside felt fresh, almost sweet. There was no dust, no smell of machinery, no noise, except the soft hum that seemed to come from the ship's heart. The path led them into a large open room. Grandma stopped at the entrance, surprised. The room was enormous, tall enough that the ceiling felt far away, yet there were no visible lights, no wires, no screens. Instead, shapes floated in the air, gentle glowing orbs drifting slowly, like lanterns on a quiet river. The child pointed, amazed. "They're floating." Grandma watched, equally fascinated. The floating orbs gave the room a dreamy, peaceful atmosphere. In the center of the room stood a raised platform. The tall beings gestured for Grandma and the child to step onto it. Grandma hesitated again, unsure of what would happen. But something in her heart told her it would be all right. The moment they stepped on, the platform lit up softly under their feet. The child held onto Grandma's arm as the glowing shapes around them changed color, shifting from silver to pale blue. Then, as if responding to a silent command, the walls around the room changed. They didn't move physically. Instead, images appeared across them like a giant screen forming out of thin air. The images showed stars, planets, swirling lights, and long paths stretching across black space. It felt like watching the universe breathe. The child gasped loudly in awe. "Are they showing us where they come from?" Grandma didn't know how, but she felt the same thing. The images weren't random. They told a story, one without words. She saw a planet covered in blue light, then another surrounded by rings made of shining dust. She saw giant clouds of color floating in space like painted sunsets. Then the images changed again, showing the tall beings traveling through the stars inside glowing crafts, just like the one they were in now. Grandma felt her heart soften as she watched. For a moment, she forgot she was standing inside a ship with beings from another world. Instead, she felt as if she were watching memories, stories of someone else's journey. One of the beings stepped forward and placed a long, slender hand gently over its chest, as if saying, "This is who we are." Grandma nodded, trying to show she understood, even just a little. The being seemed satisfied with her response. Then the images faded away. The glowing orbs dimmed. The platform beneath them softened its light again. The figures guided Grandma and the child toward another pathway. This one was narrower, but still open and glowing. The air grew warmer as they walked, and a gentle vibration came through the floor. Like the heartbeat of something big and alive, not at the end of the path was another large chamber. The moment they entered, Grandma felt a different energy. Not dangerous, but strong and unusual. The room was darker, lit by a deep blue glow that rippled like water. And in the center of the room, resting inside a circular enclosure, was a large creature. Grandma froze. The child did too. The creature wasn't like anything on earth. It had scales that shimmered faintly, wings folded against its sides, and eyes that glowed softly with a deep, thoughtful light. It lay curled up like a giant resting animal, breathing slowly. The tall beings watched from behind, silent and almost amused, as if expecting a certain reaction. But the creature didn't move suddenly. It didn't open its mouth or spread its wings. It simply lifted its head slowly and looked at Grandma and the child with an expression they didn't expect. Gentle curiosity. The child held Grandma's hand tighter. "It's big," the child whispered. "It is," Grandma said quietly. "But it doesn't look angry." One of the tall beings let out another soft, echoing laugh, a sound that held no cruelty, just amusement. It was as if they expected fear, but instead they saw calmness. Grandma felt something strange when she looked into the creature's eyes. Not danger, not fear. Something different, like the creature was trying to understand them just as much as they were trying to understand it. The creature leaned its head slightly forward, sniffing the air gently. It kept its distance, not stepping closer, simply watching. The child whispered again, "Does it want to meet us?" Grandma didn't know the answer, but she did know one thing: the creature wasn't acting like something dangerous. It wasn't restless. It wasn't tense. It was simply observing, peaceful and curious. She took a small step forward. The tall beings watched closely. The creature lowered its head in return, its glowing eyes soft and steady. Grandma felt a wave of calm wash over her. She didn't understand what was happening, but she felt no fear now. Just curiosity and a strange sense of connection she couldn't explain. The child stepped beside her, standing tall and brave, mirroring her calmness. The tall beings made their soft laughing sound again, clearly surprised by how natural the moment looked. But Grandma didn't look back at them. She only watched the creature breathing gently, as if waiting for something more. She didn't know what the future held, or why she and the child were chosen to witness such a moment. But she could feel it. This was only the beginning of a story stranger and bigger than anything she had ever imagined. The creature inside the glowing chamber kept its eyes on Grandma and the child, watching them with a calm, steady gaze. Its large body rose and fell with every slow breath, and the soft blue light in the room made its scales shimmer gently, almost like ripples in a quiet lake. Grandma didn't move at first. She wasn't scared, just cautious. The child stayed right beside her, small hand wrapped firmly around her old fingers. The tall beings stood behind them, watching with interest, as if waiting to see how humans would react. Their posture was relaxed, and their glowing eyes shifted from the creature to the two humans with an almost playful curiosity. They weren't forcing anything, and they didn't seem worried. It almost looked like they believed the creature would behave gently, or they trusted Grandma more than they trusted themselves. For a long moment, everything stayed silent except the low hum of the chamber and the creature's slow breathing. The air inside felt warm, but not uncomfortably so. It carried a faint, sweet scent, like fresh rain on dry soil. Grandma breathed it in slowly. Letting it calm her. She whispered to the child, "Stay close. Don't run. Just breathe." The child nodded, eyes wide but not frightened. "It doesn't want to hurt us," the child said softly. Grandma squeezed the child's hand. "Maybe it doesn't." The creature blinked once, slowly, as if responding. Then it lowered its head a little more toward the ground. Its wings remained folded, and its long tail stayed still. Every movement it made was slow, gentle, careful, like it didn't want to startle them. Grandma felt something warm in her chest, a strange sense of understanding that she couldn't explain. She had grown up around animals, goats, cows, even stray dogs. She had learned early in life that creatures could sense human intentions. They knew fear. They knew kindness. They knew when someone wished them no harm. And as she looked at this enormous creature, she sensed the same thing. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't angry. It wasn't preparing to attack. It was simply curious. The child took half a step forward without thinking. Grandma quickly placed her hand on the child's shoulder, and the child stopped but didn't pull back. The creature's eyes followed the small movement, glowing softly, not with danger but with interest. One of the tall beings behind them made a soft, echoing sound, that same gentle, amused tone they had used before. It didn't sound threatening. It sounded almost like they were surprised by how fearless the humans were. Then, to everyone's surprise, the creature shifted its long neck and let out a soft sound. It wasn't a roar or anything loud. It was low, warm, almost like a deep purr or a distant musical note. The sound vibrated lightly through the floor, tickling the soles of their feet. The child smiled a little. "It sounds friendly." Grandma nodded. "It does." She felt her heart soften. Something in her wanted to respond. So she took one slow step forward, still holding the child's hand. The tall beings leaned forward slightly, observing carefully. The creature didn't move away or react sharply. Instead, it lowered its head even more, bringing it closer to their level. Grandma whispered softly, "Hello. We don't understand your world, but we're not here to hurt you." Her voice echoed gently through the chamber. The creature blinked again, then exhaled a warm breath that reached the two humans like a tiny wave of warm air. It wasn't strong or frightening. It was gentle, like a friendly gesture. The child let go of Grandma's hand just long enough to reach out slightly, palm open, but not touching anything. Grandma's heart tightened for a second, not in fear, but in protectiveness. But she let the child keep that small gesture. Sometimes, children had a way of connecting with things adults couldn't fully understand. The creature slowly extended its snout forward, stopping just before the child's hand. It didn't touch. It simply drew close, as if trying to smell or sense the tiny human. Its eyes softened, glowing like two warm lanterns. The child whispered, "It's looking at me." Grandma smiled gently. "Yes, it sees you're not scared." The tall beings whispered among themselves in their strange musical tones, sounding surprised. Maybe they expected the humans to scream or run. Maybe they expected the creature to behave differently. But none of those things happened. Instead, the room felt peaceful, like the start of an unexpected friendship. The creature slowly sat up a little straighter, folding its legs under its body in a comfortable position. Its wings shifted slightly, brushing against the glowing enclosure, sending soft ripples of light around the room. The colors around them changed gently from blue to pale green, as if the chamber itself reacted to the creature's emotions. Grandma noticed this and whispered, "It's like the room is alive." A child nodded, watching the glowing colors dance across the walls. One of the tall beings stepped forward and softly tapped a panel on its arm. The floor under Grandma and the child shifted slightly, bringing them one small step closer to the creature without them having to walk. Grandma raised her eyebrows, surprised. "They want us closer." The child whispered, "Do we go?" Grandma took a deep breath. She didn't want to put the child in danger, but at the same time, nothing in the creature's behavior felt harmful. And the tall beings didn't seem worried either. Instead, they looked amused and curious, like this moment was something rare even for them. Finally, with a slow step, Grandma walked forward again. This time, the creature bowed its head fully to the floor, a gesture that looked surprisingly respectful. Grandma wasn't expecting that. She hesitated, then slowly reached out her wrinkled hand. She didn't touch the creature, but she let her hand come close enough that she could feel the warm air moving around it. The creature responded by letting out another low, soft sound, a sound that felt like gentle approval. The child took another step, standing noticeably braver now. "It likes us," the child whispered, smiling up at Grandma. Grandma laughed softly, a warm, genuine laugh filled with relief. Maybe it does. In that quiet moment, something changed in the room. The tension faded completely. The creature relaxed its wings and lowered itself even more. The tall beings behind them exchanged looks and made more soft, musical sounds. Not laughter this time, but something like surprise, mixed with wonder. Maybe they had brought humans here expecting fear. Maybe they had never seen anyone look at the creature with anything besides panic. But now, they watched an elderly woman and a child stand calmly beside something they had probably seen as frightening. Grandma wondered what the beings thought of humans now. Did they think all humans were this brave? Or did they think this moment was something rare? She didn't know, but she felt proud, not of herself, but of the child who stood beside her. Showing more courage than many adults she knew, she sat down slowly on the edge of the glowing platform, easing her tired legs. The child sat beside her. The creature tilted its head, watching them with gentle curiosity, then slowly rested its chin on the ground, as if joining them in a quiet conversation without words. The tall beings didn't interrupt. They simply watched. Grandma whispered to the child, "You see? Kindness is understood everywhere, even in places we don't know." The child nodded, eyes shining. "I think it knows we won't hurt it." "Yes," Grandma replied softly. "And maybe that's why it won't hurt us." Time passed gently, without any rush. The creature and the humans simply sat together, sharing the quiet moment. Even the tall beings seemed to respect this peaceful connection. Grandma didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know why she and the child were brought here, or what the beings planned. But for now, she felt safe. The creature felt safe. And the room, with its glowing walls and soft hum, felt strangely comforting. Something deep inside her whispered that this moment would change everything, not in a bad way, but in a way she couldn't fully understand yet. For a long time, Grandma, the child, and the creature stayed in the quiet chamber together. The creature lay calmly near them, its warm breath moving the light dust on the floor, its glowing eyes soft and peaceful. Grandma could feel how different this moment was from anything she had ever experienced. She wasn't young anymore, but she felt something inside her awaken, a deep sense of understanding, as if life still had surprises waiting for her even at this age. The tall beings had expected something else. That was clear from the way they watched, their large eyes blinking slowly. They stood in a half-circle behind Grandma and the child, whispering to each other in soft musical tones. Their whispers were not angry. They were confused, almost amazed. It was like they had arranged a test, and the results turned out completely different from what they planned. The creature lifted its head again and looked at the tall beings instead of the humans. For the first time, its eyes didn't show calm curiosity. They showed something closer to disapproval, as if the creature wasn't pleased with them. Grandma noticed this right away. The child noticed too. "It doesn't listen to them," the child said quietly. Grandma nodded. "It listens to us more." The tall beings seemed to sense this shift in behavior. They tapped their long fingers against glowing panels on their arms, as if trying to send a signal to the creature. A soft pulse of light spread through the chamber, moving across the walls like a slow wave. Grandma expected the creature to react, maybe stand up, maybe step back, but instead, the creature ignored the command completely. It simply turned its head away and lowered it beside Grandma again, choosing comfort over obedience. The tall being's whispers grew louder, their tones sharper, like they were becoming frustrated. Their glowing eyes shifted colors, going from calm silver to a pale yellow. Grandma could tell something about the situation had become unusual for them. One of the beings stepped forward and raised its arm. The glowing panel on its wrist lit up brighter than before, sending another wave of light across the room. This time the pulse was stronger. Even Grandma and the child felt a tiny vibration under their feet. But the creature didn't move. It didn't even blink. Instead, it gently unfurled one of its wings, stretching it slightly, the tips brushing the glowing floor. The entire chamber brightened with soft light when the wing moved, as if the room reacted to the creature's emotion rather than the being's command. The tall beings stopped their signals. Their heads tilted slightly to the side, showing confusion. It was almost as if they were asking each other silently, "Why is it not listening?" Grandma didn't know the answer, but she could guess. The creature felt safe with them. It felt understood. It felt seen. And sometimes, even strange creatures reacted to simple kindness more than anything else. The child leaned close to Grandma and whispered, "It chose us." Grandma took a slow breath. "Yes, it seems that way." The creature opened its eyes again and nudged its snout gently toward the child. The child giggled softly and placed a hand near the creature's warm scales. The creature's breathing grew softer, almost like it was calming itself. The tall beings continued watching, their confusion growing. They made another series of soft clicking sounds, like they were discussing something serious. One of them stepped forward again, but the creature didn't even look up. Instead, it shifted slightly closer to Grandma, its large body relaxing beside her. Grandma knew she couldn't speak their language, but she could speak with gestures. So she turned toward the beings and shook her head lightly, as if trying to say, "Don't force it." She placed one hand gently on the creature's scales, then pointed to herself and the child. The beings didn't react immediately. They blinked slowly, trying to understand her meaning. Finally, one of them made a gentle gesture with its long hand, almost like asking Grandma, "Why?" Grandma didn't have the perfect answer. She didn't know why the creature had chosen them. She didn't know why the room responded to the creature's emotions. She didn't know why the beings had brought them here in the first place. But she did know one thing. The creature wasn't a monster. It wasn't dangerous. It was simply misunderstood. She placed her wrinkled hand on her heart, then slowly extended it toward the creature. She hoped that gesture would explain enough. The child copied her, placing a hand on the chest and pointing at the creature with small fingers. The child even smiled, hoping the beings would understand the simple message. We trust it. The beings watched for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, their bodies relaxed a little. The colors in their eyes softened again. They weren't frustrated anymore. They were curious again. Curious in a way that suggested they might be learning something new. Grandma could feel that shift in the air. Something had changed. The being closest to them stepped forward slowly and moved its hand in a gentle circle, a movement that gave the feeling of, continue. We are watching. The creature lifted its head again and made a rumbling sound, much softer than before. It looked almost relieved. It gently leaned toward Grandma and the child, letting them rest comfortably near it. Grandma laughed quietly. It's like it's protecting us, she whispered. The child nodded. Maybe it likes us more than them. The creature seemed to respond to that, flicking its tail lightly in agreement. The movement sent tiny sparkles of light across the floor. Grandma watched the tall beings carefully. One of them raised a long finger toward the creature. A small floating screen appeared in the air, showing shapes and symbols that changed rapidly. They were studying it, trying to understand why it was behaving so differently. Another being tapped its wrist panel again, but this time the room didn't respond to their command. Instead, soft green waves of light flowed across the floor, matching the creature's calm breathing. The room wasn't following the beings. It was following the creature. And the creature was following Grandma and the child. The child looked up at Grandma with wide eyes. Do you think the room listens to it? Grandma nodded slowly. Maybe the creature has more control than they expected. The beings exchanged another series of musical whispers. Some of them stepped back slightly, giving more space, almost as if they now feared disturbing the quiet bond forming in front of them. Grandma felt something shift again, not in the room, but in the relationship between the humans and the tall beings. Before, she had felt like a visitor. Now, she felt like someone important to the moment, someone the beings were observing, learning from. The creature slowly stood up, its large body moving with effortless grace. Grandma held the child's hand tightly. She didn't know what it planned to do, but instead of acting wild or aggressive, the creature stretched its wings upward. The room brightened instantly, responding to the creature's mood. The tall being stepped back again, surprised. The creature looked at Grandma and lowered its head to her level. It wasn't asking for anything. It wasn't showing dominance. It was showing respect. Grandma raised her hand again and placed it gently against the air near its snout. The creature closed its eyes for a moment, allowing that tiny gesture to complete the bond between them. The child whispered, "It trusts us." Grandma nodded, and maybe it always wanted to. The tall beings watched silently. Their confusion was shifting into something new, something thoughtful. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't controlling anything anymore. They were simply witnessing Dot. It felt like the entire chamber, the glowing walls, the floating lights, the soft hum, was waiting for something, waiting for what would happen next, waiting to see what choice the creature would make. Grandma didn't know it yet, but this moment changed everything. The beings had planned one thing, but the creature's bond with them rewrote the plan completely. And what happened next would surprise everyone, even the ones who brought them there. When the first rays of morning light touched the fields, the world felt calm again, almost too calm for what the villagers expected to see. The grass was still wet with dew, the air was cool, and the birds were slowly waking up. But right in the center of the field, exactly where the strange glow had been the night before, something unbelievable lay waiting. The old grandma, her small grandchild, and the gentle creature from the alien ship were all resting quietly, as if they had spent the night in the safest place on earth. Nothing looked dangerous or frightening. It looked peaceful, almost soft, like a scene from a dream nobody knew how to explain. The first person to notice them was a farmer, who had woken up earlier than usual. He had been awake most of the night because he could not shake off the memory of the bright light and the strange echoing noises. He had told himself again and again that he imagined everything. But when he saw the grandma sitting by the creature's side, he froze. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He simply stared in disbelief, unsure if he was awake or still dreaming. The creature lifted its head slowly, not with any aggression, only curiosity. The grandma put her hand gently on its scaled neck, calming it the way someone calms a horse or a nervous dog. The child stood close to the grandma, holding her arm tightly, but without fear. They had returned with something nobody in the village could understand. Yet the scene carried a strange sense of trust and warmth. When the farmer finally gathered enough courage, he stepped forward and called out softly. The grandma looked up and smiled. It was not a forced smile, not a tired one. It was a warm, natural smile, almost as if she had come home after a long trip and was happy to see a familiar face. The child waved lightly, trying to show everything was all right. People from the nearby houses soon gathered, whispering and pointing. Nobody dared to come too close. Some held their breath. Some held their phones but didn't record, unsure if it was right or wrong to capture such a private moment. The creature did not move aggressively toward anyone. It simply sat close to the grandma, like a guardian. Someone finally asked where they had been. The grandma looked at the sky for a moment, as if she was trying to understand everything herself before saying anything. She explained that the strange beings had taken them somewhere far from Earth. She described the bright lights, the long hallways, the sounds that didn't feel like normal sounds, and the creature that everyone feared at first. But then she talked about how the creature had protected them, how it had refused to hurt them, even when the aliens wanted to test their reactions. People listened without interrupting. They didn't know what to say. It sounded impossible, yet the creature sitting calmly beside her made the story feel real. The villagers felt torn between curiosity and confusion. They didn't want to make any sudden moves that might scare the creature, but they also wanted to understand what was happening. The child added small details, talking about how the creature had moved closer to them, how it had responded to gentle words, and how it had not liked the loud commands from the alien figures. The child spoke with surprising confidence, as if the entire night had been something that shaped them into someone stronger. Everyone noticed the bond between the child, the grandma, and the creature. It wasn't just a simple connection. It felt deep, almost natural, like something meant to happen. People slowly approached, keeping a respectful distance. There were no screams, no panic, just cautious steps. The creature watched everyone with calm, thoughtful eyes. It didn't growl or make any frightening gestures. It seemed to be observing, as if it was trying to memorize the world it had been brought into. After some time, someone called the local authorities. Within an hour, more people arrived, officials, researchers, and curious onlookers. They set up boundaries around the field and used calm voices to keep the crowd under control. Nobody wanted to treat the situation like a danger. It was something unique, something unknown, and everyone felt they had to be careful with their reactions. The officials approached the grandma and asked gentle questions about the night. She answered honestly, describing everything she could remember. She didn't sound scared. She sounded thoughtful, a little tired perhaps, but still calm. She said she felt the creature did not belong to the aliens fully. It had its own mind and spirit, and it chose them, not because of fear, but because it sensed kindness. The creature stayed close to her throughout every conversation, never moving far. When people got too close, not in a threatening way, but just a bit eager. The creature shifted slightly, as if it wanted to remind everyone that it trusted only its chosen humans. But it never looked angry. It looked cautious, like someone stepping into a new world with unfamiliar rules. Officials discussed what to do. Some wanted to move the creature to a secure place for study, but others believed it would only cause stress and break the trust it had formed. The grandma said quietly that if they tried to force the creature away, they would lose something precious. She said the creature wasn't dangerous, not if treated kindly. While the adults debated, something unexpected happened. The creature stood up slowly. It looked at the child, then at the grandma, and then at the open sky above. The wind blew softly across the field, rushing through the creature's scaled skin. It looked almost thoughtful, as if it was listening to something only it could hear. Before anyone could understand what was happening, a soft light appeared around the creature. It wasn't bright like the night before. It was warm and gentle, like sunlight passing through a thin curtain. The creature stepped forward, moving past the grandma and child with slow, graceful steps. Each step made the light grow stronger. The grandma reached out instinctively, but the creature looked back at her with calm eyes, as though telling her not to worry. The child whispered something softly, and the creature responded with a low hum that wasn't frightening at all. It sounded almost like a goodbye. The light wrapped around the creature like a protective shell. People watched with wide eyes, unsure if it was disappearing or transforming. The grandma and child didn't cry. They simply stood still, accepting that the creature had its own path. Then, gently and silently, the creature faded from sight. One moment it was there. The next moment it was gone, leaving only the soft stirring of the grass where it had stood. The officials had no explanation. The villagers had none either. Some thought it had returned to wherever it came from. Some believed it had been called back by forces humans could not understand. But everyone agreed on one thing. The creature had chosen the grandma and child. For a reason. The grandma and child walked back home that day, surrounded by people who wanted to hear more. But the two of them stayed quiet. They wanted to keep some memories just for themselves. They didn't want the world to turn something beautiful into a spectacle. Over the next days, life in the village slowly returned to normal. But something inside the grandma and child had changed. They had seen a world beyond their own. They had learned that kindness could reach places where fear could not. And even though the creature was gone, they could still feel its presence like a quiet heartbeat somewhere, far away but still familiar. People often asked if they were afraid during the whole experience. But the grandma always answered the same way. She said fear was natural, but sometimes life gives you moments when you must choose trust instead. And that night, she said, choosing trust made all the difference. The child kept a drawing of the creature, made from memory. It wasn't perfect, but it carried the feeling of the creature's gentle nature. The grandma kept a small piece of smooth stone she had found near the creature in the morning. Nobody else knew what it was, but she felt it was a small reminder, a quiet gift. With time, the story spread beyond the village. Some believed it, some doubted it, but the villagers who saw everything never forgot the sight of the calm creature resting beside the grandma as the sun rose over the field. It became a story passed down to new generations, not as a tale of fear, but as a tale of unlikely friendship and the power of simple kindness. And the grandma, whenever she looked at the sky, always smiled again. She knew that somewhere out there, far from Earth, the creature remembered her too.